Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, today we are setting out on a seriously fascinating journey to completely deconstruct a true literary masterpiece. We're talking about O. Henry's absolute classic, The Last Leaf. But look, we aren't just going to read through the story. We are going to actually unpack the genius of the author and the specific linguistic tools, the nitty-gritty vocabulary and grammar that he used to build it. Whether you're a huge book nerd or an aspiring writer yourself, seeing how these mechanics work behind the scenes is going to completely change how you view storytelling.
So, picture this setting. In Greenwich Village, there's a blank brick wall just outside the window. And in this story, this isn't just some background scenery, right? It's the absolute focal point of the narrative, literally the canvas for a life and death struggle.
To figure out how to build a masterpiece like this, here's our roadmap. 1. Meet author O. Henry. 2. Enter Mr. Pneumonia. 3. A masterpiece of sacrifice. 4. Vocabulary and context. And 5. The mechanics of verbs.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, Meet Author O. Henry, A Life of Twists.
We really have to begin with the architect of our story, William Sidney Porter. And wow, his real life was honestly just as dramatic as anything he ever wrote. Born in 1862, he started out as a pharmacist in North Carolina. By the 1880s, he drifted down to Texas, worked as a bank teller, and eloped. But then, in the 1890s, things take a huge turn. He gets accused of embezzling funds. To dodge the trial, he actually flees to Central America and works as a cowboy, which gave him tons of material for his stories, before finally coming back to face a 5-year prison sentence in 1898. By 1907, he's publishing famous collections. It's an unbelievable bit of dramatic irony. The master of moral tales was himself a convicted embezzler who started his famous writing career from inside a prison cell.
Now, what's really fascinating about his legacy is the surprise ending. O. Henry perfected this technique so flawlessly that his pen name became literally synonymous with the literary device itself. If a story has an ending that completely pulls the rug out from under you, it's called the O. Henry ending. Keep that in your back pocket as we dive into our story.
Moving right along to Section 2, enter Mr. Pneumonia, the unseen stranger.
Stepping into the world of The Last Leaf, we immediately see how O. Henry builds this incredible tension through personification. Just a quick refresher, personification is when you describe a disease or a non-human entity as though it were a real person. So instead of just saying a cold clinical sickness was going around the city, O. Henry invents a literal walking villain to stalk the Greenwich Village artist colony.
Just listen to this. Mr. Pneumonia was not what you would call a chivalric old gentleman. He goes on to call him a red-fisted, short-breathed old duffer. It's brilliant, right? By using this personification, he turns an invisible, abstract illness into this cruel, physical thug just smiting his victims. It makes the threat feel incredibly visceral and immediate.
And that brings us to the absolutely terrifying stakes for our young artist Johnsey, whom Mr. Pneumonia has unfortunately struck down. The busy doctor gives her roommate Sue this grim diagnosis. She has one chance in, let us say, 10, and that chance is for her to want to live. This sets the stakes so perfectly. Science and medicine alone cannot save her if she's already given up hope. The real battlefield here is her mind.
Which leads us to one of the most haunting scenes in all of literature. We watch Johnsey's morbid countdown. She's lying in her iron bed, staring out the window, counting backward from 12, just waiting for the final ivy leaf to drop from that brick wall. She is absolutely certain that she's going to die the exact second it falls. O. Henry brilliantly ties her fragile, fading life directly to a decaying vine outside her window.
Which brings us to Section 3, A Masterpiece of Sacrifice, The Twist Revealed. As a fierce, freezing storm rages outside Johnsey's window, threatening to tear away that single final leaf, I want you to ask yourself a question. What actually constitutes a masterpiece? Keep this in the back of your mind, because O. Henry is about to totally flip our fundamental definition of what true art really is. Is it just a painting in a fancy museum, or is it something way deeper? Let's meet old Behrman, a painter living downstairs. The text tells us he was a fierce little old man who scoffed terribly at softness in anyone, and who regarded himself as a special mastiff in waiting to protect the two young artists. So Behrman is introduced as this grumpy, artistic failure, a guy who's been waiting 40 years to paint his big masterpiece. But beneath all that gruffness, he secretly holds a fierce, protective love for Johnsey and Sue.
Well, after a relentless, brutal night of driving rain and insane wind, the morning finally comes.
Sue fearfully rolls up the window shade, and miraculously, against all odds, the last leaf is still there, clinging bravely to the wall. Seeing this solitary little leaf fight so hard against the elements completely changes Jauncey. It shows her how wicked it is to want to die, and miraculously, she regains her will to live.
But here is the gut punch, the O. Henry ending we talked about. That leaf, it never fluttered in the wind because it wasn't a real leaf at all. Mr. Behrman died of pneumonia in the hospital just 2 days later. Why? Because he was out in that freezing storm all night. This is the ultimate sacrifice. Behrman literally traded his own life to paint his long-awaited masterpiece on that brick wall. His masterpiece wasn't some famous portrait in a gallery. It was a single painted leaf that saved a young girl's life. Okay, Section 4. Vocabulary in context. The building blocks.
Now that we've seen O. Henry's masterpiece, how do you go about writing your own? Well, let's look at the raw materials. Notice how he uses elevated, really specific vocabulary to give Greenwich Village and its unseen dangers such a vivid personality. The streets don't just cross, they traverse. The village is quaint. Artists prowl for low rents. And Mr. Pneumonia isn't just a sickness, he's a ravager who smites his victims. His word choice dictates the entire atmosphere.
He also peppers the dialogue with these amazing, colorful idioms. Jauncey was hardly fair game for Pneumonia. Old Behrman actually yells at Sue, calling her a fibber to gibbet and a dunderhead for letting Jauncey have such silly thoughts. Incorporating everyday phrases like make up her mind adds so much authentic texture. It really grounds this poetic narrative right into the gritty reality of New York City.
Finally, Section 5. The mechanics of verbs, infinitives, and gerunds.
Shifting from the raw materials of vocabulary to the structural mechanics of writing, let's directly compare two really crucial verbals, words that look like verbs but act like other parts of speech. On the left side, we've got infinitives. These are formed by the word to plus a present tense verb, like want to see or hope to plant. On the right, we have gerunds, which are formed by adding ing to the end of a verb, like being tired of waiting or deciding to go sailing.
Now, the strict system governing these verbals is exactly where it gets tricky. Writers just have to memorize which primary verbs demand an infinitive and which ones demand a gerund. For instance, verbs like hope, decide, and agree always take infinitives. You hope to paint. But verbs like avoid, mind, and finish, they demand gerunds. You avoid traveling.
So let's put this into practice. To write flawlessly, you just follow 3 simple steps. First, identify the primary verb in your sentence. Let's say it's enjoy. Second, consult the rule. Enjoy takes a gerund. Third, apply it correctly. You say, I enjoy reading, not I enjoy to read. Same goes for our story. If you write Jauncey wanted, you absolutely must follow it with the infinitive to paint, not painting. It seems like a tiny mechanical detail, but mastering it is what separates clumsy writing from a polished masterpiece.
I want to leave you with this final thought, a question that tests both your grammar chops and your literary tastes. Notice the mechanics here. Enjoy reading versus hope to find. So do you enjoy reading stories with a surprise ending, or do you hope to find authors who delay telling the outcome? Whether you're mastering the nuts and bolts of grammar or plotting a beautifully tragic twist like O. Henry, how will you use these tools to craft your very own masterpiece? Keep exploring, keep writing, and I'll see you in our next explainer.